Hi everyone, this tutorial is to show you how to make a fully dimensioned drawing sheet for the parts that you create. You will not turn in your part files into Canvas to be graded. You will turn in this drawing sheet to be graded. So the drawing sheet is actually what I will look at to see that you've done your work. So it's important that you learn how to do this properly. Now, before we go any further, if you have not already installed the RH drawing sheet template, you need to go back into Canvas and look in Inventor Download and Setup Resources and use this video to help you install the RH drawing sheet template. That's important. If you've already done that, then continue the video. Here we are at the home screen. I don't particularly care for the home screen, so I'm going to X out down here at the bottom. I want to go to New, and when I click on New, I should get this menu here. And this is where we see the RH drawing sheet template. I'm going to double click on that, and it's going to ask me for the part name, the student name, and the period. So I type in all caps for these three fields, all caps. Part name. The first part we're going to create, or do a drawing sheet for, I should say, is the fillet block. And there we go, down here at the bottom. By the way, this is called the title block. The title block, it has the company name, or for our purposes, Rockwell High School. It'll have the part name, the engineer's name, and the group that you're assigned to as an engineer. In this case, you're just by blocks. Down here, it will fill in information momentarily when we choose the part that we're creating. So, let's talk about that real quick. When we pull in a part, we have the part already created in as a three-dimensional model. We did that in a previous tutorial. Just like we did in class, you look at a part from the various faces or views. If you remember the glass box model that we did, you had 6 different views. You have a top and a bottom, a front and a back, and a left and a right. Well, we also extended that information into understanding that you don't need all 6 views for every object. You only need the views to give us a complete picture in our heads of the object. What views are necessary to recreate the part in the workshop? So, with that information, we can determine what the front view is. And once we know what the front view is, we can then figure out the top and the right side view. Now, we also include an isometric view. If you recall, about every activity we did that was multi-view started with an isometric picture. And then you had to draw the top, the front, and the right side views. Or maybe there was 1 or 2 assignments that you were given the 3 views and you had to come up with the isometric. That was a little trickier. So we're going to let Inventor do the hard stuff for us. So the first thing we do is we go to Base. Base meaning the model that we're going to be using. And you get this menu here. Select Document. Well, I'm going to click Open an existing file because I've already created them. And I saved mine to my desktop. That may be where you saved yours. So I'm going to use the up folder arrow here. And I'm going to go up to Desktop. And click Open. Scroll down, and there it is. There's the fillet block. That's what I want. Click Open. Now, this is already set up as what Inventor assumes is the front view. If you drew your object the way I drew mine, starting on the XY plane, then this probably is the front view. But some of you may have chosen the YZ plane or the XZ plane, And this may be the view that it gives you and calls it the front view. Or maybe this view is the front view. Honestly, front versus back doesn't really matter. It's whichever one's going to look best as an isometric. That doesn't look as good as an isometric as that or this. If this is my front view, it's already here. I'm going to hover above it. And I'm going to click once. Then I'm going to hover over here to the far right, upper right. Click once. That's a good isometric view. And then I'm going to click again right below that. So I have a top, a front, a right side, and an isometric. All of your drawing sheets should have those 4 pictures and then some. Now, there may be a few special cases where you don't need a top and a right because they look identical, or the front and the right looks identical because it's maybe a round object. But generally speaking, you're going to need these 4. So I'm going to slide this over a little bit. And notice how when I move the front one, all the other ones are connected to it, so they move as well. And then I have to drag these around a little bit separately. I'm just trying to make some room so that when we apply dimensions, they'll have plenty of room to be placed properly. And I'm going to call that done. Once you've stamped, I call it stamping. Once you've stamped those on there, you can then click OK. Now, it is also a thing that we do. On our drawing sheets, the isometric view is always shaded. So if you have applied color to the object, the isometric view is the one that's going to show you the color. So to do that, we hover over the isometric view, and you see the red dotted box around the object. We want to right click on that. Then we want to go to Edit View. And this is where we can change the style. And so if we hover, hidden lines, do we want to show those? Well, in this case, there aren't any hidden lines to show. So I can show them or I can hide them. Hidden line removed. Doesn't really matter in this case. But I do want to shade. So I'm going to click Shade. And I'm going to click OK. And now it's shaded. Once again, if we printed this out, it's going to be in black and white, even if it was a blue part or a green part or a red part. But this gives the person who is creating the part an idea of what color it should be in the end. Now, let's apply dimensions. Now, before you would be told that you had grid spaces on graph paper and you had to count up how many grid spaces and so on. It's much easier in Inventor. So we go to Annotate. Remember, annotate, the root word there is note or notate. So we click on Annotate, and here are the dimensions. Now, this is a little bit different from dimensions when you created the object. We're using the same numbers, but it's under a different tab. So before we sketched, and you had a dimension button under Sketch. So if we do that, you would have dimension here if you were creating a sketch. But we also put dimensions as notes. So I want to click dimension. The first thing I want to dimension is the front view. It should have the most dimensions on it because it's the most complex view. So to start with, I'm going to do width. And remember, I could put my width down here, but we were told one of our rules should be to have your dimensions within the perimeter of the object if you can. But I will say this, if we start doing that too much, we're going to have a lot of lines crossing. So click on the line. I'm going to bring this one across to here. No, actually I'm not. I'm going to leave it right here. Now watch closely. As I drag it away, it snaps and gives me a dotted line. That is Inventor telling me I have it in the right place. So I'll click it. Click OK. Now the reason I'm putting these here like this is because I have to leave room for the measurements and these arc measurements, because these are arcs that have to get their own measurements as well. So let's do a dimension from, now watch this. We're going to click this line, and it is 1.5 just like the other one, but now we're going to click this line. And notice, it's giving me the width. Click OK. Now, I could assume that this is the same, but I don't want to make any assumptions. So I'm going to do this. And that guarantees that this is 1.5 and that's 1.5. And then the final two dimensions I might do up here is the depth. So if we look back here at the isometric view, this is height. That's this line here. This one is width. That's this line here. But I also need depth. So this is depth. That's my third dimension. So I'm going to dimension here. Get the depth. Okay. Last two notes. We're going to dimension this arc here. And that radius. And that's a fillet. It fills in. So it gets a radius of 0.25. This one is, we use the fillet tool, but it's called a round because it rounds off a previously sharp edge. It is the same dimension, and I'm going to click it here, but I need to edit this because we did two different rounds. So I'm going to put in times 2. And so by putting times 2 here, that implies that this arc is 0.25, this round is, and this round is. So I don't have to put it in both places if I put a times 2. The computer or the person reading this diagram will recognize that this round and this round are the same thing. I'm using this separately because it is a fillet, not a round. That's the only reason. And that is a fully dimensioned part. That's it. Notice it put in the user CMAC desktop, so it put in the location of the file. So if I ever need to go back and try and find that file again, I can look at the drawing sheet and see where the file was, see where it came from. That's it. So I'm going to go to Save. And in my documents, there should be an Inventor folder. Oh, we haven't made a project folder yet. We'll do that in another lesson. So now I've got it saved as fillet block. I'm going to save it here. But I also need to do File, Save As. Cancel that. Cancel that. File, hover over the arrow, Export. That's what I need. Export. Export PDF. So we're going to go to File, Export PDF. And I can save it on my desktop. I can save it wherever I need to. This is the reason I'm saving it on my desktop is because I know in just a minute I'm going to be uploading it to Canvas. So fillet block, you could even put your initials on it if you wanted to, but when you upload it into Canvas, it's going into your student email. But it's not a bad idea to get used to putting initials on things to prove that it's yours. So I'm going to do Save. So I saved it as a PDF, and I can look back at my desktop, and there it is in PDF form. Let's look at it in PDF form. Make sure it looks exactly like what it should look like. And there it is. You have all this information here. Yeah, that's it. So now you can upload that document to Canvas, and that's what I'll grade. That proves, number one, that you know how to do a drawing sheet and put proper dimensions, and number two, it proves you know how to make a three-dimensional part because you created the part before you made the drawing sheet. So that's your evidence. That's your proof to me that you have learned those skills. Now, we're going to do the next one. I'm going to go ahead and do... No, you know what? No, I won't. I'll do a separate video. Okay, until the next tutorial. Take care.